Your business's success depends on relationships, relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I am excited to connect with Lia James. She is a global connector and facilitator with a background in workforce development, leadership, and career coaching. At her core, she is a connector who loves guiding people through transformation. She specializes in creating environments for collaboration across both virtual and in-person settings, turning visionary ideas into reality, and equipping teams with equitable and inclusive practices. Lia founded And Human in 2017 to address an emerging market as employers struggle to cultivate cultures that drive connection and all of the benefits that come along with it, including engagement, collaboration, creativity, innovation, efficiency, and retention. Lia, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So I love the work you've been doing, and I love how the importance of this thing is often, it's under the surface where people kind of feel that it's important, but they struggle with how to actually apply it to their businesses and how it actually helps them affect their business results. So how do you help people use being more human and creating human connections to impact their business's goals?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I think that so often it's easy for us to say, yeah, of course we need human connection, and then forget about it when we walk into the workplace or log into our computers and join Teams or Zoom or wherever we are. It's important when working with a business to help them feel comfortable first with me, so that I can help them feel like they can be more human with their team. So they can remove their masks, they can remove their layers, their armor, whatever you want to call it, and really connect one-to-one with their team members, no matter how small or large their companies are. I don't think there is like a one way to answer that question, right? How do I help them become more human? But I think the number one thing when I am working with leaders and executives of companies to help them connect as a human with the other humans on their team is I remind them that they should pause, take a breath, ground themselves, like literally feel their feet on the ground before they jump into, here's how we need to do things, or let's move through the vision. It's going to go a lot further if they take that pause, take that breath, and actually see the people in front of them, whether they visually, like physically can see them or like have to imagine them. But see the people who they're working with, ask questions, be curious about what's really going on with them on your team, because that's going to impact how you reach the vision or the mission of the organization.
That makes a lot of sense. I think there's the element of being present and listening and holding space that invites other people to connect and shows that you care about them and that their input is valued. Yes. So I imagine you have some great stories of how you've helped some leaders transform their behavior and help their business. Can you share one of those?
Absolutely. So I want to also emphasize something that you said as I lead into this story, which was that people need to actually listen and be present. I think that's one of the hardest things in business, because we're moving so fast all the time. We have this high speed demand, and in order to be competitive in a private industry, we have to move at like lightning speed in order to get things done and be competitive and not lose our spot. But the reality is, if we took time to slow down and actually be present and actually check in and like connect with the folks on our team, we would get a lot further and a lot faster than burning our people out and losing them along the way because their brains just aren't up to speed because they're tired, exhausted, burned out, disengaged, distracted by all the other things that are going on in their life. So a really good example of this, I was working with a client last year, and she is such a visionary. Like, when I say she's a dream client, she is a dream client. Like, she loves her people. She wants to put all these benefits and perks in front of them. She wants to invest in them. And she has really high expectations for where their business is going. She's in a changing industry that requires them to make some fairly big pivots that could scare a large group of people that maybe aren't so open to risk as she is. One of the days that I was meeting with her, she was sharing with me how her team was very resistant to some of the pivots that she's leading them through in order to stay competitive and to beat out their competitors. And in that process, for the first time in many years, they were starting to lose people on their team. Excuse me. For the first time ever, they were starting to lose people on their team, or first time in a while, I should say. She said, what do I do? I don't understand. I'm providing all of these perks that people want. We have personal trainers, we have mindfulness, we have great vacation time, but they're not performing. They're complaining, they're frustrated, they're leaving, they're not participating in meetings. We took a moment to kind of pull back several layers and reflect on if that's actually what her team wanted anymore. Like, her team had evolved a lot. She'd grown with them for many years. Many of them have very different lives than they did when they first started with her. And their needs in their personal life were very different than what they were now. But there's a lot of assumptions made from a leadership perspective. And she was like, but what about all this other stuff? Like, why is that the reason they're leaving? And it wasn't. Like, we needed to do an evaluation to understand what do people want on her team. And it was small enough where she could really connect with them, sit with them, understand what was going on in their lives outside of work, what was keeping them from wanting to commute into the office versus what made them want to actually be together with each other. Because when they were together, they were this lively, wonderful group, but so many of them had outside challenges that were really contributing to them not feeling comfortable going into the office. And, I think when we get in these visionary places, we do see things from a different perspective. And so we make a lot of assumptions about what everyone else needs and wants and should want and should need. And she wasn't doing it to be dismissive or rude or uncaring. It was quite the opposite. She was like over-investing, but over-investing in the wrong places. And so I think by taking her through a few different exercises and helping her facilitate conversation from a place of curiosity, as opposed to, I just need to solve the problem. You don't need to solve the problem. Like, let them tell you how to solve the problem. You can obviously, you're going to have to make some other decisions as an executive, but as leaders in this market, you don't have to have the answer to every single challenge. And you might get a lot further if you bring your people along for the ride and give them space to kind of guide you in what's really going on from their perspective.
I love that last line there about you don't need to have all the answers yourself, because I think visionaries, they have great intentions and they, like you said, they want to bring everyone else along, but they think that because they're the one with the vision, they have to know all the answers themselves. And when they make that assumption and aren't listening and aren't asking questions, then when they're trying to pull people along, people start digging in their heels because there's not exactly the path that people were expecting, because they don't have the same vision necessarily. But by stopping and listening and asking questions and slowing down, like you said, taking that breath, you're actually able to make real progress to a much higher degree when there aren't people on your team digging in their heels because you're trying to drag them along instead of bringing them with you by asking questions. I love that distinction because I think it's something where it's not done out of like malice or like it's come good intentions involved, but just misplaced, misfocused intentions And so it's not like you're a bad person for doing it this way. It's more just like your good intentions need to be tweaked a little bit, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it opens up all this potential.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone the other day. We were talking about how leaders are being called to lead in a very different way than they ever have before. And the
Mhm.
woman said back to me, she was like, yeah, it's really, she kind of like chuckled as she said this. She was like, it's really funny because I keep digging in my tool belt for different things that I've tried before and nothing's working. And I've been a leader for 25 years and now I have to completely start over, it feels like. And I think it's such an interesting time where like asking leaders to slow down, asking visionaries to slow down, to pause, to breathe, to get curious, it sometimes feels really uncomfortable, right? And it feels very I don't want to do that. Like, no.
Yeah,
But
it seems like it goes against what they've kind of their view they
yeah,
have of themselves is like someone who's moving fast and doing things, and you say, "Hey, slow down for a second." They go, "What? I don't slow down. I always go faster, faster." It's like, but if you want to go really fast, you actually have to pause for a second and let
yeah.
things recharge. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
People, I coach so many different people who have repeatedly told me, I'm just so tired. I'm just so tired. And what they don't realize is like, you're not just tired, you're actually burnt out. You're overwhelmed. There's a lot going on there in your nervous system and in your energy levels that are reflective of the work environment and everything else that's going on around you. Like, there's studies that show our nervous system hasn't caught up to how much information we're exposed to or have access to now. Employers need to think about that. Leaders need to think about that. Like, they're not the number one focus of attention anymore. I don't know that they always were, but I think they had more of people's attention than they do currently. So you're competing against so much other like noise, right? Like, you're competing against personal lives. You're competing against people who are caregivers in any direction. You're competing against news, social media, life things, world things, global things. Like, there's so much. And so to ask them or expect them to come into the office, whether it's virtually or physically, and think that they can just shut that off and just perform is unrealistic. And
Yeah,
if if people want to be amazing leaders going forward, that's why that pausing to really check in and see where your humans are, see where your people are, I think is going to make the difference between the companies that survive over the next decade and the companies that really are struggling in now seen this toxic environment.
yeah, it's definitely seeing the effect of kind of information overload and attention bandwidth overload. And so if there's a leader out there who's listening, going, "Oh my gosh, I this is totally me. I want to figure out the best, like what are the steps I can take to start implementing this, taking your breath and slowing down." What's kind of your process that you recommend people do to implement this the correct way?
Okay, so I'm going to give actually recommendations for that person as an individual first
Okay.
from an exercise that a mentor of mine taught me that I think changed my whole life, methodology, everything. So mentor is Jesse Starenshoes from the Improv Effect. Amazing, amazing, amazing strategies and techniques. This specific one is her exercise called a slow walk to nowhere. The idea is that you could be in a space that you walk through all the time, like maybe it's your house, or maybe it's your walk to the office, or maybe it's when you walk your pet or your child or whatever. But you go along that walk with a very different intention. You're supposed to slow down and notice things that you often would pass by quickly. Look very intentionally at things that you usually just brush past. You know they're there, but you don't pay attention to. And dig into the details. What do you notice? What do you notice coming up in your body? What do you notice yourself thinking or feeling, or is something else changing in your mind? And then reflect on how that shifts your presence and like your awareness of yourself and others around you. That may seem like, oh, that's not a work practice, Leah. Like, that's not going to help me at work, but it does. Because why does it help you at work? It helps you because when we're trained to move so quickly, and our brains are conditioned to go, 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 get this done, be the first to market, be the first to get this done. It's really hard when you say, I just need to be present. I just need to be aware. You're still going to find yourself in meetings and in conversations tuning out or speeding through, not having the patience to listen to them because you've already completed their sentence 5 times over and you already have the answer. If you practice things like this that force you to slow down, your presence is going to change when you are meeting with people or meeting one-on-one with someone, where you're really hearing them, really digesting what they're saying, really like processing it before you have a response to their comment or question or whatever. And then when you're in the room with other people, go back to what I said earlier, which is like, take a breath, pause, really like exhale and listen to them before you respond. Feel yourself grounding. Think about your body. Think about like how you feel in that moment. And that's going to help you be more present with the other person, as opposed to just saying like, I need to be present. Like that doesn't mean anything if we're not actually practicing the movements. And then have grace with yourself and know that we're all learning in this new market and this new world. I can't stress asking questions, asking for feedback, asking how they feel, asking what's going on in their lives. It's going to get you so much further in your leadership journey in today's market.
That sounds so awesome. I hope listeners out there try this out. And if you want more help from Lia, how can people connect with you? How can they find you? What's the best way to reach out?
To find my website, we're at www.andhuman, spelled out, .space. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Lia James, and that's LIA JAM as in Mary, ES. But you can find me in either of those places. Those are great places to stay up to date with what we're doing, and different tips, tricks we're sharing with helping people actually connect with one another.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you being a guest, and thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. You'll find links to Lia and other episodes in the notes, and have a great rest of your day.